what I want to do is introduce to you the videotape, which is the first in a series of videotapes by Shauna Halevi on the genius of Albert Einstein. This is a production that really comes out of the fact that in the LaRouche youth movement, under LaRouche's guidance, and Sean is a part of the team, he has a group of youth who are focused on bringing about a scientific revolution by redeveloping the methods that led to great scientific discoveries in the past, and that were part of a single unified idea of the creative nature of mankind. There's a nice irony in that Einstein stood for this through his entire life as a moral, scientific, cultural, and political fight. Even in the latter part of his years when he was considered a pariah for not accepting the new science that was irrational, that rejected the idea of a unified universe. Einstein himself, who came out of the great German Weimar classical culture, was steeped through his family in people like Schiller and Heine, also was steeped in the scientific outlook of people like Bernhard Riemann, Gauss, and harked back to Kepler. And when he specifically rejected the Newtonian outlook and went to Kepler, Gauss, and ultimately Riemann, whom he had to rediscover to be able to complete his scientific work. And he fought for that every step of the way. This is the view of mankind that has produced all of the developments that are progressive, that mean real anti-entropic development in human history. And so it's quite appropriate that Shauna, as part of the LaRouche youth movement, is looking at a figure like Einstein to exemplify the quality of mind, the quality of person as an integral whole that's required to allow humanity to progress further out of these otherwise troubled times. So we're inviting you to take a view and a look at science and culture through the eyes of Albert Einstein, his violin, his sense of what humanity is, and the fight that he waged, through which he himself kept alive the minds of Kepler, Gauss, Riemann, Mozart, and many others. And he kept it alive for us, and now for this youth movement, to forward the very discoveries that he made. What they're looking at now is creating a unified picture of action and scientific and anti-entropic development in the universe as a whole, bringing together what Vernadsky calls the biotic, the prebiotic, and the cognitive, and using that to make the very same quality of discoveries and beyond that people like Einstein, Planck, Riemann, and others made. So this is something we invite you to view, to be able yourself to not only comprehend these kinds of developments, these kinds of personalities, but recognize that this is part of who you are.
Do you remember asking the big questions? What is the meaning of life? Where does the universe end? What does it mean that we are going to die? How do I know what is right and what is wrong? Is it merely relative? What is truth? How is it that I can think about me thinking? Why did you stop asking these questions? Did you grow up and then find the answers? Or did you give up? These are difficult questions, but some say only the difficult matters are worth our attention. In the following series of videos, we hope to reignite or reaffirm in many people the human quality of youthfully pursuing knowledge and the moral courage needed for that. The example of Albert Einstein will provide us with a generous friend to help pursue some essential questions, starting with, what is the nature of man? mankind as a species is distinguished from lower forms of life by a creative impulse to fulfill future missions for improvement of our progeny's existence in our universe. The meaning of one's life is determined by the commitment to this immortal mission. Individual creative discovery, the search for truth, is driven by the joy and passion that comes from the commitment to mankind's advancement. Progress is morality. When this sacred devotion is absent, evil, such as the British financial empire of London and Wall Street, stalks and seeks to snuff out this light through mental slavery, war, economic crises, and genocide. Our citizenry needs to be intellectually and emotionally equipped to combat this. There is a demand for individuals self-conscious and determined enough to lead and take responsibility to willfully develop society. Politically, the question of an international Glass-Steagall and a short-term goal of a colony on Mars puts this squarely on the table. How, as a culture, do we accomplish this? Let us introduce our friend as a case study. To understand Einstein's mind, his genius, we must know the culture he came from, the unseen tradition he was a part of.
If you look at universal history over long arcs, one can actually see that there were only relatively few periods in history where mankind really progressed. And I would underline maybe three periods as absolutely outstanding. One was naturally the Greek classical period, which sort of was the cradle of European culture. Then you had a long dark age, only interrupted with developments in China, in India. But the next time there was really a massive period of progress was the Italian Renaissance. And then the next major period of development was the German classical period.
By returning to conceptions of classical Greece and reviving Shakespeare, Germany was able to make a leap forward in the evolution of humanity, representing the highest development in human culture to this day. Musical composition and other arts reach its most elevated expression with Bach, Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, Brahms, the Schumanns and Mendelssohns, not to mention the poetry of Heine and the drama of Schiller.
Then if you look at the philosophical development, which emanated really from the ideas of Leibniz, who revived the great tradition of Cusa and Kepler, Leibniz's conception about the harmony of the human soul and the laws of the universe was laying the foundation for a lot of great developments, both in art and in science, to follow.
Some of the followers of Leibniz, such as Kästner, Moses Mendelssohn, and Lessing, fought for the most lofty ideals of mankind in Germany. Ideals like the American conception that all men are created equal.
This German classical period, which you had, both in music but also in literature and poetry, was really a potential threat to the dominance of the oligarchical system over Europe. Because Schiller, who was the beloved poet of this period, he had this idea that every man can become a genius. Every human being has the potential of becoming totally unique and contributing something absolutely unique to human civilization.
Schiller organized the intellectual and political leaders of Germany to implement these ideas as policy in all realms of life. One of his friends, the famous Wilhelm von Humboldt, turned Schiller's image of the beautiful character into an educational system, where the aim of education was a method of learning, not just learning specifics.
Nowadays, people worry a lot about their beautiful body or their beautiful outlook or their beautiful this or that, but to think about the beauty of your soul, that is not very fashionable these days. But Schiller's conception about a beautiful soul was simply the idea that man can only be free when